Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something that is literally keeping Fortune 500 executives up at night, and that is the highly interconnected nature of modern business risks. We're going to use some truly fascinating insights from the Sophurion Horizon platform to deconstruct exactly how the most resilient organizations out there are staying ahead of the curve. So if you're looking to understand how global threats overlap, and more importantly, how to master them, well, you are definitely in the right place.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want to ask you something. Are you reacting to disruptions or anticipating them? Now, it's a pretty provocative question, especially if you're sitting in the C-suite right now. Because, let's face it, the reality of today's volatile world is that if you're only reacting when a crisis hits, you're already too late. Traditional risk management tends to look in the rearview mirror, but the world we operate in, it is moving far too fast for that.
Let's anchor this abstract concept with some hard data. Looking at the live global exposure signal index, you can see exactly where the pressure is building right now. Look at this. Supply chain exposure sits at a massive 71.0. Right behind that is opportunity at 68.3 and climate at 62.4. Now, these aren't just isolated theoretical numbers. They're active, real-time warnings. Supply chains are currently tracking as the absolute highest exposure signal globally, which honestly probably surprises absolutely no one who's tried to move goods internationally lately.
So here is our itinerary for today's explainer. First, we'll cover the converging risk landscape. Second, introducing Sophurion Horizon. Third, the 6 dimensions of exposure. Fourth, real-world risk scenarios. And finally, building long-term resilience. All right, let's get moving.
Section 1. The converging risk landscape. Moving from isolated problems to interconnected systems.
The big takeaway for us here is that risk is simply no longer isolated. We used to neatly put financial, regulatory, and physical risks into completely separate buckets. Well, not anymore. Today, things like geopolitical tensions, climate disruptions, and supply chain vulnerabilities are actively colliding. They're completely reshaping global operations. It's like a giant domino effect. A localized storm triggers a shipping delay, which creates a part shortage, which then causes a massive financial crunch. You absolutely must anticipate this convergence before it happens, because you just can't afford to wait for these specific problems to hit.
Section 2. Introducing Sophurion Horizon. Enterprise intelligence for risk and strategic decision-making.
To navigate this massive convergence we just talked about, you need an analytical solution that synthesizes all of these global signals. That is exactly what Horizon does. So the crucial point is how it shifts an organization from a reactive posture to a proactive systems view. And it does this across 4 main pillars. First up is intelligence, creating a single decision surface that pulls everything into one view. Second, foresight, which gives you multi-year risk modeling. Third, resilience, helping you translate exposure into prioritized adaptation actions. And fourth, the systems view, which lets you see the forest and the trees simultaneously in a connected global context.
Section 3. 6 dimensions of exposure. 1 executive view mapping out enterprise vulnerabilities.
Let's break down how this works under the hood. The framework maps your exposure across 6 interconnected areas. So we have climate, which covers physical and transition risks, geopolitics for regional instability scoring, supply chain, which goes deep into Tier 1 and Tier 2 dependency mapping. Then regulatory tracks your disclosure readiness. Infrastructure monitors asset criticality and aging risks. And finally, opportunity looks at decarbonization and capital access. What's so incredibly powerful here is the logic of it all. Seeing elements like your regulatory disclosure readiness sitting right side by side with your Tier 2 supply mapping, all in one unified executive view. It's a real game changer.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds real-world risk scenarios, from theoretical models to practical applications.
It's one thing to look at a theoretical framework, right? But it's another entirely to actually survive it. Let's look at scenario 1. Imagine you're running a massive multinational manufacturer. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a severe drought absolutely kills agricultural output in a key sourcing region for you. Because of that, alternative shipping routes instantly bottleneck. And, as if that wasn't enough, geopolitical tensions in that exact corridor suddenly spike. This isn't just a run of bad luck. This is a compounding, cascading supply chain crisis that is building by the hour.
Now, without a system like Horizon, our manufacturer is essentially flying blind. They're stuck in that old siloed approach, scrambling to react to shipping delays as they happen, and completely unaware that their Tier 2 suppliers are already choking out. But with Horizon, it's a totally different story. The platform spots those emerging risks early. It highlights the vulnerable dependencies before the goods even stop moving, and it recommends prioritized mitigation. You're neutralizing the disruption before it ever escalates to hit the balance sheet.
All right, scenario 2, let's flip the script a bit. You are applying for capital to build a brand new facility. Now, the financial world has changed drastically, hasn't it? Modern banks and lenders are aggressively evaluating climate risks, sustainability performance, and governance structures long before they ever sign a check for a large capital project. If you walk into that lender meeting without this intelligence, you are entirely unprepared for those strict evaluations. You're risking a much higher cost of capital. Actually, scratch that. You're risking flat-out denial. But with Horizon, your organization identifies its gaps well in advance. You improve your risk maturity, and you build a highly credible, data-backed investment case. This kind of proactive preparation radically changes the power dynamic when you are sitting across the table from major financial institutions. It proves your sustainability credentials right out of the gate.
Finally, scenario 3. Let's talk about an insurance company evaluating a manufacturing facility in a high-risk region. Insurers today are pricing risk more aggressively than ever before. To get coverage, you have to definitively prove your business continuity capabilities and show that your assets are actively protected.
If you lack the intelligence on these converging threats, you're projecting operational vulnerability straight to the underwriter, and your premiums are going to skyrocket to reflect that uncertainty. But armed with Horizon, you thoroughly understand your climate exposure. You can clearly prove your resilience investments and assess your continuity risks proactively. You position your organization as a safe bet, which positions you favorably with insurers and can literally save you millions in premiums.
Section 5. Building long-term resilience. Transforming complexity into clarity.
And this brilliantly illustrates our core philosophy. Now that we've seen those practical applications, a world of converging risk demands converging intelligence. It's that simple. You just cannot fight interconnected global threats with siloed, disconnected spreadsheets anymore. The intelligence you use absolutely has to match the complexity of the risk itself. That's the power of predictive sustainability intelligence.
So how do we actually execute this? Well, it comes down to 4 rapid-fire steps that every single risk manager needs to internalize. Step 1. Assess your entire landscape across all dimensions. Step 2. Analyze the converging impacts. Step 3. Prioritize the absolute most critical actions. And step 4, strengthen your organization's resilience before the crisis ever hits. Assess, analyze, prioritize, strengthen.
Which brings us to a magic number, 15. 15 is the number of minutes, and exactly the number of questions it takes to run a free assessment through Sophurion Horizon. In just a quarter of an hour, the platform yields 6 highly tailored exposure scores for your specific organization. It is an incredibly low barrier to get immediate, high-level visibility into your structural vulnerabilities.
Which leaves us with one vital, final thought for you today. Are you ready to take the 15-minute assessment and map your true exposure? Because in a world where risks are constantly colliding, having that clarity isn't just a nice-to-have. It's your ultimate competitive advantage. You need to map your vulnerabilities before the market does it for you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious and stay resilient out there.